The halls of Falcon Ridge Air Force Base were always clean enough to see your reflection in them, and that was because of Maria Collins. Every night, when the hangars quieted and the boots stopped echoing, she emerged with her cart, her mop, and her silence. The base never slept, but it did grow still after midnight, and Maria liked it that way. The silence was her friend. It didn't ask questions. It didn't pry into the past. The soldiers passed her daily with polite nods. "Evening, ma'am. Thanks for keeping the place shining." She'd smile, give a small nod, and keep moving. They knew her as the cleaning lady, the woman who could scrub an entire aircraft bay floor alone without complaint. No one ever wondered who she was before on that blue uniform and ID badge. They saw the mop, not the person holding it. But beneath that quiet exterior was a woman built from discipline, loss, and secrets, ones buried deep enough that she hoped even time would forget them. She clocked in every evening at precisely 8 p.m. Her supervisor, a cheerful civilian named Greg, would hand her the night's checklist. Offices, corridors, the officer's mess, and finally the East Hangar, the one that always made her uneasy. That hangar was restricted, heavily guarded, and full of things she wasn't supposed to know existed. But the job was simple. Clean what she could see, ignore what she couldn't. That night, the base felt different. There was tension in the air, subtle but sharp, like the hum before a storm. Soldiers whispered in corners. Black SUVs with tinted windows came and went from the command building. Maria noticed the new signs. Authorized personnel only, freshly bolted to certain corridors. She wasn't the kind to gossip, but she could feel unease humming through the concrete walls. She wheeled her cart into the west corridor, humming softly to herself as she mopped. The rhythmic motion soothed her, a kind of meditation. The hum of fluorescent lights filled the air. Her reflection stared back at her from the polished floor. Calm eyes, brown hair pulled into a tight bun, posture straight even after hours of work. Years of discipline had left their mark, though the soldiers never guessed that. A group of young airmen passed by, laughing, their boots clattering. "Hey, Miss Collins," one said cheerfully. "You ever take a night off?" Maria smiled faintly. "If I did, this place would collapse from the dust." They laughed and kept moving, their voices fading down the hall. Once they were gone, her expression faded into quiet focus again. She reached the officer's lounge, spotless already. She straightened a few chairs, wiped a glass table, and paused near the window overlooking the dark runway. The Nevada desert stretched endlessly under the moonlight. Rows of jets stood in silent formation, their silhouettes sharp against the horizon. Beyond them, a faint wind stirred up sand like ghosts. Maria stood there a moment longer, her thoughts drifting to another desert, another time, a memory she fought to bury. The sound of rotors overhead, the smell of oil and cordite, a radio screaming orders. Then nothing but dust and blood. She blinked hard and forced herself back to the present. Her watch beeped. Midnight. Maria pushed her cart toward the east sector. The corridor grew quieter, colder. Motion sensors flickered the lights on as she passed. She'd cleaned this route hundreds of times, yet tonight, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching. As she reached the door to the east hangar, she noticed something off. The door wasn't fully closed. It was slight, maybe an inch gap, but to someone as detail-oriented as Maria, it might as well have been a siren. The magnetic lock's green light blinked weakly instead of steady. She frowned, glancing down the hall. No one. She hesitated, hand hovering near her keycard. "Probably just a maintenance tech," she murmured. But her gut twisted. Years ago, in another life, she'd learned to trust that feeling. Still, she slid her card and pushed the door open a few inches. The hangar lights were dim. The massive space stretched out before her. Polished floors, crates labeled confidential, a covered aircraft in the center. The only sound was the distant hum of generators. Nothing moved. "Hello?" she called softly. Her voice echoed back to her. No answer. She stepped inside, her shoes squeaking faintly. Her cleaning cart rattled as she rolled it over the threshold. Everything looked undisturbed, yet she could sense that something was off. The kind of subtle disorder that only someone who cleaned the same place every night could notice. A clipboard had fallen near the supply shelf. A metal wrench lay on the floor, as though dropped in a hurry. Maria bent down, picking up the wrench. Her reflection stared back from its steel surface, eyes sharp, searching. She turned toward the far wall. A small red light blinked on a control panel. Error code. Her first instinct was to report it. She pulled out her walkie-talkie. "Maintenance to security. This is Collins. I think there's a malfunction in Hangar East lock system." Static crackled. Then a lazy voice. "Copy that, Collins. Probably just the wind again. You're fine. Carry on." She exhaled through her nose. The wind, they said. It was always the wind. Still, she couldn't shake it. The base was secure to the point of obsession. Nothing was ever left open. No door ever ajar. She stood for a moment, weighing her options. Then, with a small shake of her head, she decided to double-check the perimeter herself. As she walked, the overhead lights flickered. Once, twice, then steady. A power fluctuation, or so she told herself. The air felt colder now. Her footsteps echoed louder than usual, bouncing back from the walls. She made her way down the narrow corridor that wrapped around the hangar. A shadow crossed the floor, just for a second, and she froze. Nothing, just her mind playing tricks. She turned to leave, pushing her cart back toward the main hall, when her radio crackled again. Only this time, it wasn't static. It was a low, distorted sound, almost like breathing. "Hello?" she said. "Security?" No response. She clicked it off. Maria rolled her shoulders, trying to shake off the chill crawling up her spine. She was tired, that was all. Overthinking. As she exited the hangar, she made sure to pull the door tight until it latched. The green light flickered back to solid. Satisfied, she turned toward the next corridor. But halfway down, she stopped. On the freshly mopped floor, clear as day, were boot prints, wet, heavy, military grade. They weren't hers, and they were heading deeper into the restricted wing. Maria's heart began to pound, steady and deep. She looked around, but the hallway was empty. The night air pressed in, heavy and electric. She followed the prints with her eyes. 1 step, 2, 3, until they vanished into the shadows near a service hatch. Every instinct in her body screamed to turn around, walk away, call for help. But something stronger, older, took over. She set her mop aside, adjusted the strap of her cleaning apron, and took a deep breath. Her posture straightened unconsciously, the stance of a soldier preparing for reconnaissance. For the first time in years, Maria Collins felt her pulse steady, not with fear, but with focus. Something was wrong in Falcon Ridge Base, and though she had long buried her past, tonight it began to wake again. The base had its own rhythm, engines humming in distant hangars, radios murmuring, boots echoing in metal hallways. But tonight, the rhythm was off. Maria could feel it in her bones. Something beneath the calm surface was stirring. The night air outside was cold, pushing through the narrow cracks of the building. Inside, fluorescent lights flickered faintly overhead. Maria pushed her cart slowly down the corridor, following those strange boot prints she had seen earlier. They had dried now, leaving only faint outlines, but her mind couldn't let them go. She'd seen hundreds of boots across the years. These were heavier, thicker, and military issue. Someone had walked through a part of the base where they shouldn't have been. She stopped near the service hatch where the prints disappeared. The hatch was locked with a metal latch and keypad, one only maintenance and security could open. She crouched down, brushing her fingers along the floor. The metal felt cold, colder than it should have been. Something had disturbed this place recently. She exhaled slowly, straightening up. "You're imagining things," she whispered to herself. Too many late nights. But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't true. Maria decided to check the nearby security station, a small room halfway, down the hall where guards usually monitored camera feeds. She turned the corner and froze. The security room door was wide open. Inside, the screens glowed with static. No camera feed, just white noise. Her pulse spiked. She stepped inside cautiously, her shoes squeaking on the tile. The air smelled faintly of burnt circuits, like someone had shorted the system. One of the panels had been removed, wires hanging loose. On the floor, a coffee cup had tipped over, its contents dried into a dark stain. "Security breach," she muttered. "There's no way this is just a glitch." She reached for the radio clipped to her belt and pressed the button. "This is Collins, Maintenance Sector 3. You've got a system fault in East Surveillance. All screens are down." A pause. Then a half-laugh from the other end. "Collins, it's 2 in the morning. Those cameras freeze all the time. We'll check it during the morning shift." She clenched her jaw. "No, listen. Someone's tampered with the wires. It's not just..." The radio crackled. "Copy that, Collins. Go home, get some rest. We'll handle it." The line went dead. She stared at the device for a moment, her frustration mixing with unease. Nobody was listening. Nobody ever did. To them, she was just the janitor, too serious, too quiet, always overreacting. She set the radio down and looked at the monitors again. Even though the static danced across every screen, she could swear she saw faint movement, a shadow crossing one of the hangar doors, too deliberate to be coincidence. Her instincts screamed, "Something's wrong." Maria turned to leave, but then a sudden sound echoed from somewhere down the corridor, a dull metallic clang. She froze, every nerve alert. Her eyes darted toward the door. Another sound followed, quieter this time, like someone closing a vent or hatch. She stepped outside the security room, glancing both ways. The corridor stretched silent and empty under the pale lights. Her footsteps sounded too loud. For a long moment, she stood there, torn between common sense and the muscle memory of who she used to be. Finally, she made her decision. Maria walked back to her cart and quietly opened the lower compartment. Beneath the cleaning supplies, she had a small toolkit, screwdriver, flashlight, wrench. Not much, but enough to make her feel less helpless. She took the flashlight and turned it on, the beam slicing through the dim corridor. As she moved, she began to think back to the missions she used to run. Observation first. Never rush in. Gather intel. She crouched near the wall, examining the small service vent near the hatch. The screws were loose, 2 of them almost completely unscrewed. She touched the edge and found faint smudges of grease and dust, no, powder, gun residue. Her throat tightened. This isn't maintenance work. A heavy thud echoed from deeper inside the wing, followed by the faintest scrape of metal on metal. She clicked off the flashlight immediately, letting her eyes adjust to the darkness. The sound came again, rhythmic, purposeful. Someone was moving. Maria's breath slowed, the way it used to when she was on recon. She pressed herself against the wall, inching forward silently. Her shoes barely made a sound on the polished floor. As she reached the corner, She peeked around, just a glimpse. The corridor beyond was dimly lit by emergency bulbs. And halfway down it, near the restricted hangar door, was a figure. He was tall, dressed in dark clothing. No visible insignia. No reflective patches like base personnel wore. He moved with precision, crouching near a control panel, his hands working quickly. Her stomach dropped. Whoever he was, he didn't belong here. Maria ducked back behind the wall, her heart thudding in her ears. Intruder. The word hit her like a shockwave. For a split second, panic tried to rise, but the soldier inside her buried it fast. She needed proof. She needed to call it in. She brought the radio back to her lips, whispering, "Security, this is Collins. I have unauthorized personnel in East Sector Corridor. Repeat, possible intruder." Static. Then nothing. She tried again. Still dead. Her mind raced. The surveillance was down. Communications were jammed. He'd cut them intentionally. Maria took a step back, her breath sharp. If he was in the restricted area, he might be after something critical. Data, weapons, technology. She didn't know, and she didn't want to. But she couldn't just walk away. She looked around. The janitorial closet was a few feet behind her. She slipped inside and quietly shut the door. In the dim light, she took inventory. Mop handles, a metal broom, glass cleaner, duct tape, a roll of extension cords. She needed to think like she used to, use what was available. Her pulse steadied as her training resurfaced. No weapon doesn't mean no defense. She turned off her flashlight, cracked the door open slightly, and listened. The footsteps were closer now. The intruder was moving down the hall, checking doors one by one. His movements were deliberate, tactical. Maria's hands tightened on the metal broom handle. Then, from outside, a faint metallic click, the sound of a rifle being readied. Her heart hammered. She forced her breathing to stay quiet. The shadow passed right by the closet door. She caught a glimpse through the thin crack. Gloved hands, rifle slung tight, black boots. Every instinct screamed to stay hidden. But another voice, quieter, stronger, reminded her, there are people sleeping 2 buildings away. If he's here for what's in that hangar, you can't let him succeed. She didn't know how long she stood there after he passed, frozen, waiting for any sound that meant he was gone. When she finally stepped out, the corridor was empty again. But she knew now. This wasn't paranoia. Someone was inside the base, armed, moving with a purpose. Maria reached for the nearest fire alarm pull box, but hesitated. If he heard it, he could trigger something worse. No, she needed to be smart. She backed away slowly, eyes scanning the floor. The boot prints were new again, damp from outside air. He'd entered through a secondary hatch, probably cut power to certain circuits. Maria whispered under her breath, "He's good." Then she added, almost defiantly, "But I've seen better." As she pushed her cart toward the maintenance corridor, every sense sharpened. The hum of the lights, the smell of machine oil, the cold touch of metal. All of it flooded her mind with old instincts she thought she'd buried years ago. The soldier in her was awake now. And as she moved deeper into the base, the woman everyone ignored was about to become the one person standing between safety and disaster. The wind outside howled across the desert plains, carrying sand against the metal walls of Falcon Ridge Base. Inside, the night remained unnaturally still. Maria Collins stood motionless in the dim corridor, listening. Somewhere beyond the next hallway, something metallic clanged. A short, sharp sound, like a door slamming against steel. Her grip tightened around the metal broom handle she still carried from her cart. The intruder was close now. For a moment, she considered slipping out through a side exit, getting to the barracks, and alerting everyone. But the comms were down. The cameras were out, and she had seen his rifle. If she left him alone, even for a few minutes, people could die. She moved slowly down the hall, keeping her steps silent, her breathing steady. Every fluorescent light above flickered as she passed, throwing her shadow against the walls like a ghost following her. At the end of the corridor, the restricted hangar loomed, its heavy door sealed, a keypad glowing faintly red. Maria crouched behind a stack of crates, peeking out. The intruder was there. He wore black tactical gear, no insignia, no ID tags. His movements were efficient, mechanical. He carried a suppressed rifle, and a small tool pouch hung from his vest. He wasn't breaking in blindly. He knew exactly what he was doing. Maria's pulse thudded in her ears. She could see the reflection of his gloved hands working the keypad panel, rewiring it. Sparks flickered as he bypassed the security lock. Then came a sharp beep. The heavy door slid open. Inside was darkness, thick and still, like the air itself was holding its breath. He stepped in. Maria exhaled slowly, every instinct in her body warring with logic. She could still turn around, pretend she hadn't seen him, and survive the night. But that wasn't who she was. Not anymore. She waited until he disappeared inside, then followed quietly. The hangar stretched wide and empty, lit only by a few emergency bulbs glowing orange. A massive tarp-covered structure dominated the center, some kind of prototype aircraft, sleek and black under the dim light. Rows of labeled crates lined the far wall, restricted. Defense property. Classified Level 4. Maria ducked behind one of the crates, crouching low. Her heart pounded, but her movements were calm, controlled. The intruder walked straight toward the aircraft, removing a small tablet from his vest and scanning the control panel beside it. He muttered something under his breath, too quiet to catch. She watched as he connected a device to the aircraft console. The screen on his tablet glowed faint blue. He was downloading something. Data. Damn it, she whispered to herself. He was stealing classified intel, right under their noses. She looked around, trying to think. She needed to stop and stall him until she could alert someone. But how? She had nothing but cleaning supplies. Her gaze landed on the far wall, an old fire alarm handle, barely visible in the dark. It wasn't connected to the security system. If she pulled it, it would trigger sprinklers and emergency lights chaos, but also attention. It could work. She started moving, slow as breath. 1 step, 2. The intruder's back was still turned, his focus entirely on the device. The hum of his equipment filled the room, masking her footsteps. When she reached the alarm, she counted down in her head. 3, 2, 1. A metallic clatter echoed behind her. She froze. Her cleaning cart left by the entrance had rolled slightly, one of its wheels squeaking against the floor. The man spun instantly, his rifle rising. Maria ducked behind the nearest crate, just as a suppressed gunshot cracked through the air. The bullet tore into the metal beside her. Her heart leapt into her throat. He was fast professional. Who's there? His voice was low, steady. No panic, just control. Come out. Maria pressed her back to the crate, her breathing shallow. She needed to distract him, to keep him from approaching the data console. Her eyes darted to her surroundings, fire extinguishers, storage crates, hanging cables. She grabbed a small metal bolt from the floor and tossed it across the hangar. It clattered against the far wall. The intruder turned toward the sound and fired again. The suppressed pops echoed in the cavernous space. Maria took her chance. She lunged forward, yanking the fire alarm handle. Instantly, sirens blared. Red warning lights flashed across the hangar. Sprinklers hissed, drenching everything in water. The air filled with mist and chaos. The intruder cursed, shielding his eyes from the sudden spray. The tablet sparked as water hit it, shutting down instantly. Maria ducked behind another crate, heart pounding. He recovered fast. "Big mistake," he muttered, scanning the area. She could barely see him through the sheets of falling water, but she could hear him, his boots slapping against the floor as he moved cautiously through the mist. Maria crawled behind a set of crates, gripping her broom handle like a spear. Her pulse steadied again. She had no gun, no armor, but she knew how to use her surroundings. He passed within 10 feet of her position. "Stay low. Wait. Let him come closer." The sound of boots stopped. Silence. Then suddenly his voice, right behind her. "You shouldn't have done that." Before she could react, a hand grabbed her shoulder and yanked her backward. She twisted, swinging the broom handle with both hands. It struck his forearm with a sharp crack. He grunted, stepping back. Maria dropped the handle and grabbed the fallen wrench from her belt pouch, striking out again. The metal connected with his mask, sending him stumbling. He retaliated fast, grabbing her arm and slamming her against a crate. Pain flared through her shoulder, but she didn't freeze. Years of muscle memory kicked in. She ducked low, twisted, and swept his legs out from under him. He hit the floor with a heavy thud. For a moment, they both lay still, catching their breath in the red-lit haze. Then he reached for his sidearm. Maria kicked it away and scrambled to her feet, wrench still in hand. She wasn't strong enough to knock him out, but if she could delay him just a little longer, help might arrive. The sirens continued to scream. Somewhere outside, she could faintly hear movement guards responding. He stood slowly, towering over her, soaked and furious. "You have no idea what you've just done," he said through gritted teeth. Maria's eyes narrowed. "You're right. I don't, but I know you don't belong here." They faced each other, the world flashing red around them, both breathing hard. For a brief second, something in his stance flickered hesitation, maybe recognition. Then, without warning, he lunged again. Maria ducked under his swing, grabbed a loose cable from the floor, and looped it around his wrist, pulling tight. He jerked away, but she used his momentum, twisting his arm until he dropped the rifle completely. She kicked it aside, then backed away, panting. Through the haze, she saw the hangar door burst open. Armed security rushed in, shouting commands. The intruder turned sharply, realizing his window was gone. He darted toward the emergency exit, shoving a crate aside. A flash of light filled the air as he tossed something small, a smoke grenade. The guards coughed and stumbled as thick smoke swallowed the room. Maria covered her face, coughing. By the time the smoke cleared, the intruder was gone. Gone, but not invisible. He'd left behind his broken tablet, sparking and soaked, and a single patch torn from his vest. Black cloth embroidered with a symbol she recognized instantly, a falcon with one wing torn. Her blood ran cold. She'd seen that insignia before. Years ago, in another life. She knelt, staring at it, water dripping from her hair, heart pounding with old memories. This wasn't random. Whoever he was connected to something far bigger, and somehow connected to her past. The soldier inside Maria Vasquez was awake now, and for the first time in years, she wasn't running from it. The base was locked down by sunrise. Helicopters circled above, searchlights slicing through the dawn mist. Armed patrols swept the desert perimeter while inside, investigators sealed off the hangar. Maria sat alone in the debriefing room, her soaked uniform replaced with a dry one. Her hands trembled slightly around the paper cup of coffee she hadn't touched. The image of the intruder's mask haunted her every blink. But worse than that was the insignia, the falcon with one broken wing. She hadn't seen that symbol since Kandahar, 2010, The door opened with a metallic click. 2 officers entered, both wearing dark blue uniforms. The taller one, Major Thomas Reeves, nodded toward her. Maria Collins. Or should I say, Staff Sergeant Maria Vasquez? She froze. Reeves dropped a thin file onto the table. Her old military photo stared up at her short hair, sharp eyes, that same quiet determination. We ran your fingerprints, he continued. Imagine our surprise finding out our quiet janitor is a decorated combat veteran, presumed dead in action 12 years ago. Maria's heart pounded in her chest. You have no right to dig into my past. Reeves leaned forward, voice steady but sharp. We do when someone infiltrates a classified facility, and the only person standing between him and a data breach is a ghost soldier. The other officer, Captain Reynolds, folded her arms. You want to tell us who he was? Maria looked away, her eyes fixed on the small window. I don't know. That symbol you handed over, Reynolds said, sliding the torn patch across the table, belongs to an off-the-books unit Raven squad. They were disbanded after an unauthorized strike in Kandahar. You served with them, didn't you? Maria didn't answer. Reeves sighed. We're not your enemy, Sergeant. But whoever that intruder was, he knew exactly what he was doing. The data he targeted wasn't random. It was flight telemetry for Project Talon. That's classified beyond top secret. Maria's voice was quiet, but steady. I wasn't trying to be a hero. I just saw something wrong and stopped it. Reeves studied her for a long moment. Well, you might have saved hundreds of lives last night. But you also reopened a case we buried a decade ago. He slid another photo across the table. The face staring up at her made Maria's stomach twist. It was him. The intruder. Mask off. A little older, eyes colder, but there was no mistaking him. Captain Nathan Cross, Reeves said. Your old commanding officer. The room seemed to tilt. For a moment, Maria couldn't breathe. That's impossible. Cross died in the explosion, Reynolds interrupted. No body was ever recovered. Maria's fingers trembled against the photo. Memories came rushing back. The ambush, the sandstorm, the gunfire. Cross shouting orders through the radio. The sudden blast that swallowed half the unit. She remembered dragging 2 men out before the second explosion, and then everything went dark. When she woke up in a field hospital, they told her Cross and the rest were gone. She'd left the army after that, her mind fractured by the ghosts of war. She changed her name, moved across states, and tried to disappear. But now, her ghost was alive and had just broken into her base. Reeves stood. We'll need your cooperation. Whatever connection you had with him, we need it now. Maria shook her head. You don't understand. If Cross is alive, something's gone very wrong. He wasn't just a soldier. He was part of a program that was supposed to be erased. Reeves frowned. What program? Maria met his eyes. Project Falcon. The room went silent. Reynolds exchanged a quick glance with Reeves. That project's classified even above our clearance level. Maria nodded. Exactly. And if Cross had access to that kind of data, he's not working alone. By evening, she was back in her small quarters, the walls closing in around her. Outside, soldiers moved in coordinated patterns, searching, guarding, interrogating. She sat on her bunk, staring at the insignia patch in her hand. The stitching was frayed, but she could still trace every line of that broken-winged falcon. Her mind drifted back to the desert night 12 years ago, the mission gone wrong. Project Falcon had been designed to create autonomous combat intelligence machines capable of independent decision-making, merging human instinct with AI precision. Cross had believed in it. He said it would save lives. But Maria had seen what it did. The last mission had spiraled into chaos because of it. The AI turned on their coordinates, triggering the ambush that killed half their team. After that, the government buried Falcon under classified files and declared the survivors dead. But now, Cross was back, and he wanted Falcon's core. Maria stood and walked to her locker. She reached deep into a hidden compartment and pulled out a small box wrapped in an old field map. Inside were the things she swore never to touch again. Her dog tags, a worn photograph of her old squad, and a single encrypted drive labeled FO1. She hadn't looked at it in years. She plugged it into her small personal laptop. The screen flickered, then came to life. Dozens of encrypted logs appeared: mission reports, GPS data, experimental schematics. And there it was, the file Cross had been trying to steal: Falcon Core neural pattern. She scrolled through the data, feeling her stomach sink. It wasn't just code. It was a consciousness imprint, a digital reconstruction of Cross himself. Back then, he volunteered to be the first merge. The system mapped his brain's combat pathways, instincts and reflexes into the AI. It was meant to create an immortal soldier, capable of outthinking any enemy. But it failed catastrophically. Or so she thought. Now, it made sense. Cross wasn't just working for someone, he was trying to rebuild himself. A sudden knock on her door snapped her back to the present. "Collins?" A voice called. "You have a visitor." Maria frowned. It was late past curfew. She opened the door slightly and froze. Standing there was Captain Reynolds, looking uneasy. "We need to talk," she said quietly. Outside, they stepped into the empty corridor. The base was quieter now, but tension hung heavy in the air. Reynolds lowered her voice. "Reeves is grounding all flights. But there's something you need to see." She handed Maria a tablet. On it was security footage, grainy, infrared. The timestamp was from 20 minutes ago. A figure moved through the desert, outside the perimeter fence, tall, hooded, carrying a small case. The patch on his arm was unmistakable. Maria's pulse quickened. "Cross." Reynolds nodded. "He's not running. He's planting something." Maria zoomed in on the footage. The faint outline of a device glowed on the sand, a beacon, pulsing red. "He's calling someone," Maria murmured. "Or something." Reynolds looked at her. "You seem to know him better than anyone. What's his next move?" Maria stared out the window, watching the faint glimmer of lights beyond the fence. She could almost hear his voice again, the same calm, commanding tone from years ago. "He's not done," she said finally. "He's setting the stage. And if I know Cross, he'll come back tonight." Reynolds swallowed hard. "Then what do we do?" Maria turned, her eyes hardening. "We stop waiting for orders." She walked back into her quarters, opened the hidden compartment again, and pulled out a folded combat vest, her old gloves, and a sidearm she'd kept for years, disassembled and buried beneath her tools. As she strapped on the vest, her reflection in the mirror caught her attention. The quiet janitor was gone. What stood before her was the soldier she used to be. Staff Sergeant Maria Vasquez, 19th Recon. The ghost of Falcon Ridge was back. The desert was too quiet. No wind, no crickets, just the low hum of the base generators and the faraway whine of a radar dish rotating. It was a silence Maria Vasquez had heard before, the kind that came before the shooting started. From the watchtower, floodlights cut through the night, scanning the sand beyond the fences. Soldiers moved like shadows below, tense and ready. The alarm level had been raised to code amber, but no one knew what they were waiting for. Maria stood beside Captain Reynolds, binoculars pressed to her eyes. She could still see the faint red blink of the beacon Cross had planted hours ago, half buried in the dunes. "He's marking a target," Maria said quietly. "Something or someone is coming." Reynolds exhaled, her voice tight. We already sent a drone. The beacon's transmitting encrypted signals, too advanced for standard tracking. Maria lowered the binoculars. That's because it's not a signal meant for us. It's calling something that was built to listen to him. Reynolds turned sharply. What do you mean? Maria's jaw tightened. Project Falcon. The prototype AI units. We destroyed them years ago. But Cross may have found a way to reactivate one. Before Reynolds could reply, a siren wailed. The base floodlights flickered, then died completely. In the distance, the ground seemed to rumble, not like thunder, but like engines. Movement on the perimeter. A soldier yelled over the comms. Multiple heat signatures approaching fast. Maria's pulse raced. How many? 6. No, 8. Wait, they're not human. The sound hit them next, the high-pitched mechanical whine of autonomous drones slicing through the air. Sleek, black, and deadly, they broke over the fence line like a swarm of hornets. Machine gun fire erupted across the compound. Reynolds drew her sidearm and ducked behind a barrier. Incoming fire. All units engage? Maria didn't wait. She sprinted toward the armory bunker, shouting at 2 soldiers to follow. Inside, she tore open a weapons locker and grabbed a rifle. Her hands moved from memory, loading the weapon with practiced precision. Ma'am, you can't go out there, one soldier started. She shot him a look. I'm not sitting this out. Those machines aren't after random targets. They're after Falcon's core data. That means they'll head straight for Command Center Delta. Outside, explosions ripped through the night. The base, usually so calm and sterile, had turned into a war zone. The drones swooped low, spraying bullets that tore into vehicles and walls. Sirens blared, soldiers shouted orders, and the smell of burning fuel filled the air. Maria and Reynolds regrouped near the comms tower. Sparks showered down as a drone clipped the structure, sending steel fragments raining around them. We can't hold this, Reynolds yelled over the chaos. They're too coordinated. They're linked, Maria said grimly, firing at one that dove toward them. Kill the signal, you kill the swarm. Reynolds blinked. You mean the beacon? Maria nodded. Cross is controlling them remotely through it. We shut that down, we take back the base. Reynolds hesitated. That's suicide. It's out beyond the fence, in open ground. Maria checked her magazine. Then it's my kind of mission. Without waiting for approval, she ran. Bullets whipped past her as she darted through smoke and debris. She could hear the drones above, the mechanical shriek of rotors slicing the air. The ground shook from explosions behind her, but she didn't look back. The gate loomed ahead, twisted from earlier impact. A half-burned Humvee blocked the exit, flames licking at the metal. Maria used the smoke as cover, vaulting over the wreckage. The desert opened before her, vast, dark, and silent, except for the distant blinking red of the beacon. She dropped to one knee, took aim, and fired. The first shot sparked against the beacon's shell, reinforced. She cursed under her breath and sprinted closer, sand whipping at her boots. The red light grew brighter, pulsing faster now, like it knew she was coming. A voice crackled through the comm in her ear, distorted, familiar. Always the hero, Vasquez? Her blood ran cold. Cross. You should have stayed buried, his voice said. The world doesn't need ghosts. It needs control. You call this control? She shouted, ducking as a drone swooped low over her head. I call it evolution. The drone banked and came around again, its targeting laser locking on her chest. Maria dropped flat just as it fired, the shot kicking up sand inches from her face. She rolled, raised her rifle, and fired 3 controlled bursts. The drone exploded mid her, scattering debris across the dunes. She reached the beacon. Up close, it was more complex than she expected. A cylindrical device humming with internal power, connected to a buried transmitter. She yanked the multi-tool from her belt and pried open a panel. Inside, blue light pulsed through cables. She scanned the internal core, lines of AI code scrolling across a small screen. "He's using Falcon code to control the swarm," she muttered. "It's integrated. Maria, get back." Reynolds' voice screamed through the comm. "We've got another heat signature inbound, larger this time." Maria barely had time to look up. From the darkness, something massive moved. A shadow with legs like armor plating, walking with terrifying precision. A prototype Falcon unit. Her stomach twisted. No, it can't be. The machine's head rotated, sensors glowing red as it locked onto her. It was 8 feet tall, humanoid, but built for war. The last surviving autonomous soldier. "Target acquired," it said in a low, mechanical voice. Maria grabbed her rifle and fired, but the round sparked uselessly off its armor. The machine raised its arm, firing a pulse that threw her backward into the sand. Her ears rang. Her ribs ached. She saw stars. Then, through the haze, she heard Cross's voice again. "You see, Maria? This is what we were meant to be. Soldiers who never die. Minds that never fade." She gritted her teeth. "You didn't make soldiers, Nathan. You made monsters." She staggered up, pain searing through her side, and ran toward the machine. It swung a metal arm, but she slid under it, driving her combat knife into a joint near its knee. Sparks flew, the limb locking momentarily. "Reynolds!" she shouted through her comb. "I need a strike on my position now." "Negative. You're too close. Just do it." The Falcon unit lunged again, mechanical hands closing around her throat. She gasped, clawing at the grip as it lifted her off the ground. Its red optics glared inches from her face. Then the air around her lit up, a white flash and a roar. A missile hit the dune 20 yards away, a shockwave throwing her clear. The machine took the brunt of it, its chest caved in, circuits sparking. It staggered, then collapsed into the sand, smoke billowing from its frame. Maria coughed, sand filling her mouth. She dragged herself to her knees and crawled back to the beacon. With trembling fingers, she pulled a wire free, exposing the power cell. "Goodbye, Nathan," she whispered. She jammed her knife into the core. The red light flickered, once, twice, then went dark. Across the base, the drones dropped from the sky like stones. Silence returned. For a long moment, Maria just sat there, the desert wind howling softly over her. The horizon glowed faintly with the first hints of dawn. "Vasquez, come in," Reynolds' voice crackled. Maria pressed her calm. Still breathing. "Jesus, you did it. The swarm's down. We're sweeping the perimeter now." Maria looked at the smoking wreck of the Falcon unit. "He's not gone," she said quietly. "Cross wouldn't be that easy to kill. If that was his machine, then he's still out there." Reynolds was silent for a moment. "Then we'll find him." Maria shook her head, her voice low and steady. "No, I will." She looked toward the dunes, where the wind was already erasing her footprints. Somewhere beyond that horizon, Cross was waiting, and this time she wouldn't just be cleaning up his mess. She'd end it. The desert stretched endlessly before her, a frozen wasteland of sand, jagged rocks, and broken dreams. Falcon Ridge Base was behind her now, smoldering slightly from the previous night's chaos, but she didn't glance back. Her boots dug into the fine grit, each step deliberate, each breath measured. She carried minimal supplies, her rifle, the knife that had severed Cross's control over the Falcon AI, and the encrypted drive containing Project Falcon's data. Everything else, radios, vehicles, were either destroyed or compromised. The sun had not yet risen, but the desert already carried a cruel heat. Maria adjusted the straps on her backpack and squinted toward the faint glimmer of footprints in the sand. Cross had fled east, following the winding path of an old service road. He was fast, but not fast enough. As she followed, Maria's mind replayed every moment from the previous night: the intruder, the drones, the Falcon unit. The adrenaline still hummed through her veins, but beneath it was a simmering rage. Cross had been her commanding officer, a man she once respected, even trusted. Now he was something else entirely, a ghost of the man she knew, warped by obsession and vengeance. Hours passed, the sun peeking over the horizon and burning the sky in shades of gold and orange. The desert heat intensified, and her throat was dry, lips cracked. But she refused to rest. Every minute she delayed, Cross could rebuild, regroup, or worse, complete Project Falcon's second iteration. By midday, she spotted him. He moved across a ridge several hundred meters ahead, unaware that someone followed him. His black tactical vest was unmistakable, the broken-wing Falcon insignia clear. In his hands, a small device, possibly another control module. He paused, scanning the dunes, calculating his next move. Maria crouched low behind a ridge, assessing. There were no vehicles, no backup. It was just her, the desert, and the man she had once called a friend. Her military mind worked in overdrive. She needed a plan. Cross was brilliant, cunning, and reckless, but he had predictable patterns. He always believed he could control every variable. That was his flaw. She waited for him to move into the open sand flat below. The wind had picked up, carrying dust in twisting columns, giving her cover. Slowly, she descended, using every rock and dip as concealment. Then she saw it, a hidden bunker, partially camouflaged beneath the dunes. Cross was approaching it. Her stomach twisted. That bunker wasn't on any Falcon Ridge map. It was an off-grid facility, exactly the kind of place where Project Falcon's AI could be reborn. Maria's mind raced. He's building the second Falcon unit here, she whispered to herself. And if he succeeds, the base won't be the only target. She slowed, crouched near the entrance, and observed. The bunker's hatch was partially open. Cross entered, carrying the device. Maria's pulse accelerated. She needed intelligence. No sudden moves. No unnecessary exposure. Drawing a small mirror from her vest, she angled it to see inside the hatch. Inside was worse than she imagined. Rows of machinery hummed, cables snaked across the walls, and a partially assembled Falcon AI sat in the center, its head encased in steel plating, red lights flickering across its frame. Cross was attaching a neural interface, connecting the control device directly to the AI's processing core. Maria's stomach clenched. He was trying to complete the prototype, a living AI soldier linked to his own neural pattern. She ducked back behind a ridge. One wrong move and the AI could activate, becoming another unstoppable weapon. Her cum crackled faintly, the signal weak. She ignored it. Now was not the time for backup. This was personal. Hours passed. Cross worked with meticulous care. He muttered to himself, adjusting wires, scanning screens, inputting codes. Maria noticed something that made her blood run cold. The system was partially biometric. It was reading his neural patterns in real time. He was essentially merging his mind with the machine. If it completed, it wouldn't just be an autonomous soldier. It would be him, amplified, immortalized in steel. Maria clenched her fists. She couldn't allow it. Not now. Not ever. As Cross straightened and stepped back, the lights in the AI unit flickered, dimly at first, then bright. A low hum rose, vibrating through the sand. The machine's sensors activated. Red optics scanned the bunker, searching. Its voice module clicked on. Subject identified, it said in a mechanical echo of Cross's own tone. Neural link established. Maria's throat went dry. He had succeeded, partially. She needed a diversion. Slowly, she scanned the area for anything to disrupt the machine. A stack of crates, a buried fuel canister, loose wiring. Finally, her eyes settled on a small pile of sand near a support post. Maria gathered several rocks and small debris, tossing them into the air near the entrance. The machine's sensors flicked toward the movement. Cross turned, irritated. "Stay on task," he barked. Maria ducked, circling to the left. She needed to enter the bunker quietly, reach the interface, and sever the neural link before the AI could fully integrate. She crept forward, staying in shadows, her rifle slung but unused. Every step brought her closer to the unknown horrors waiting inside. Inside, the bunker was a maze of cables and machinery. The AI unit's red optics rotated slowly, scanning for threats. Maria approached the control panel Cross had been using. Her fingers moved over the interface, memorizing the wiring. She had seen this system before, years ago, during training. She could reverse it, disrupt the connection long enough to force the machine offline. Cross was unaware. He was monitoring something on a separate terminal, oblivious to her presence. Maria's hand hovered over the final wire. One wrong move, and the AI could react defensively. Her breath slowed, body tensed. Now or never. She pulled the wire. Sparks flew. The hum escalated into a shriek. Red lights blinked erratically. The machine staggered. Cross shouted, lunging toward the control panel. Maria ducked under his grasp, twisting the remaining cables to short-circuit the neural interface. "No," he screamed, slamming into her, sending them both crashing into the floor. Dust and sparks filled the bunker. The AI unit convulsed, its system sparking, then silence. The red lights faded. Maria scrambled to her feet, panting. Cross lay on the floor, glaring at her with wild eyes. "You think this ends here?" he hissed. She raised the rifle, aiming at his chest. "It ends tonight, Nathan. I won't let you rebuild it. I won't let you become a monster again." Cross slowly stood, back toward the exit. "You've only delayed me. Falcon isn't just a project. It's evolution. You'll see." "You always see, Vasquez." Maria stepped forward, lowering her rifle slightly. "No, I saw enough in Kandahar to know what it really is. Death disguised as progress." Cross hesitated, then bolted into the desert. Maria knew this wasn't the end. He was fast, he had knowledge of the terrain, and he had the ambition to rebuild again. But she also knew something else. She was relentless, trained, and unafraid. She picked up the encrypted drive, staring down at the AI unit. Sparks continued to pop, smoke rising slowly from its chest cavity. The machine's body would never fully activate again. For now, Maria walked back toward Falcon Ridge Base, the sun high in the sky, sand scorching her boots. Every step was measured, every breath deliberate. She had stopped Cross for now, but she also knew the war wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And somewhere in the desert beyond the horizon, Nathan Cross was plotting his next move. Maria Vasquez, the ghost soldier, would be ready. The desert sun sank low over Falcon Ridge, painting the sky blood orange. Shadows stretched across the dunes, like dark fingers reaching for the base. Maria Vasquez moved cautiously, every step measured, every sense on high alert. She knew Cross had retreated, but she also knew he was planning something. And whatever it was, It wouldn't wait until morning. The encrypted drive containing Project Falcon's neural patterns burned a hole in her back. It was the key to everything: his plan, her past, and the lives that might be at stake. She couldn't let him get it. The sand crunched beneath her boots as she followed the faint tracks he had left earlier. The desert was eerily quiet. No wind, no wildlife. Just the sound of her own breathing and the soft hum of the base's distant generators. She spotted the entrance first, a hidden service hatch partially buried under sand. Cross had used it to escape before. Now it was her only lead. She crouched low, scanning the surrounding area for signs of surveillance or ambush. Nothing. Maria descended carefully, flashlight in hand, moving into the narrow tunnel. The walls were cold, metal slick with condensation. Every step echoed slightly, reminding her of how alone she was. Ahead, she could hear it, the soft, rhythmic hum of machinery. Her heart rate spiked. Cross had set up another prototype. She could feel it in her bones. This would be the final test. She edged closer. The tunnel opened into a cavernous underground facility. Lights flickered on, revealing a massive room filled with machinery, monitors, and in the center, a partially assembled Falcon unit. Its armor gleamed under fluorescent lighting, hydraulic arms flexing slowly as if anticipating the battle to come. And there he was, Nathan Cross. His black tactical vest was unmistakable. The broken-winged Falcon insignia was sewn over his heart. He didn't notice her at first, too absorbed in connecting wires from the control module to the A. Maria's pulse pounded. She had to think fast. She couldn't confront him head-on, not with the AI half-activated. She crept along the shadows, eyes scanning for anything to use: crates, wires, loose tools, power conduits. The AI unit's red optics began to flicker as Cross adjusted the interface. "Almost there," Cross muttered. "Just a few more sequences, and we'll be unstoppable." Maria swallowed hard. "Not if I can help it." She moved behind a stack of crates and grabbed a heavy wrench. Her plan was simple: disable the neural interface before the AI could fully merge with Cross's mind. One shot, one strike, one chance. She exhaled slowly, preparing to move, when a voice echoed from the shadows. "Going somewhere, Maria?" She froze. Cross had known she would follow him. How long had he been watching? He stepped out from behind a console, a small, cold smile on his face. "You never could stay away from the battlefield, could you?" Maria tightened her grip on the wrench. "This ends tonight, Nathan." He laughed softly, almost regretfully. "You think you can stop evolution with a wrench?" The Falcon unit's optics snapped fully online, red lights scanning the cavern. It took a step toward her, metallic limbs clicking ominously. Maria didn't flinch. "Then evolution dies tonight." Cross hesitated, his attention split between Maria and the AI. That was her chance. She hurled the wrench at the control module. Sparks flew. A loud crack echoed through the room. The module's connection to the AI shorted. "No!" Cross screamed, rushing forward. Maria ducked under his outstretched arms, rolling across the floor. She grabbed a loose cable and jammed it into a power conduit. The lights flickered violently, and a high-voltage arc shot across the room. The Falcon unit convulsed, sparks flying from its joints. Cross stumbled back, his eyes wide with shock. "You don't understand what this means." "I understand perfectly," Maria said, panting. "It means you've gone too far, and I won't let anyone else pay for it." He lunged, trying to reach the AI to salvage the neural link. Maria met him with a knee to the chest, forcing him backward. They collided, rolling across the metal floor. "You always were stubborn," Cross hissed, catching her wrist and twisting it. Maria gritted her teeth, twisting back, breaking his hold. She grabbed a loose pipe from the floor and swung it with all her strength. It struck him in the shoulder, sending him sprawling into a stack of crates. The Falcon unit staggered again, sparks cascading from its exposed circuits. It let out a metallic groan, stumbling toward the tunnel exit. Cross scrambled to his feet, rage overtaking reason. "You think this changes anything?" Maria stepped forward, wielding the pipe and her resolve. "It changes everything. Your war ends here." He pulled a small handgun from his vest, aiming at her. She dove to the side, rolling behind a crate as the gunshot rang out, sparks scattering from a nearby metal support beam. The AI unit's sensors locked onto both of them, scanning for the nearest threat. Cross froze. The machine, confused by the short circuit and power surge, hesitated. Maria realized she had one last chance. She sprinted toward the AI, using a heavy toolbox as cover. She opened it and grabbed a high-voltage taser designed for heavy machinery, meant for immobilizing equipment in emergencies. She fired the charge at the AI as exposed circuitry. The room erupted in light and sound. The Falcon unit convulsed violently, sparks and smoke filling the cavern. Its joints locked, systems overloaded. A final, echoing metallic groan signaled its death. Cross screamed in frustration. "No, you can't kill it. You don't understand what you've done." Maria stood tall, chest heaving, eyes locked on him. "I understand perfectly. You were never meant to control this power. It wasn't evolution. It was death. And I'm done watching you bring it to life." Cross, cornered, realized he had no options left. His eyes flicked to the broken Falcon unit, the sparks still flying from its joints. Rage, fear, and disbelief contorted his face. Maria advanced slowly, keeping her weapon trained on him. "This ends now. Surrender, or I will make sure you're stopped for good." For a tense moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then Cross lunged one last time. Maria sidestepped, using his momentum to push him toward the control console. Sparks from the damaged equipment shocked him, and he collapsed to the floor, writhing and screaming. Maria stood over him, chest heaving, sweat and grime streaking her face. The AI unit lay silent, smoke curling from its destroyed frame. The room smelled of ozone, burnt circuits, and victory. "You?" Cross gasped, struggling to speak. "You don't understand?" "I understand enough," Maria said, voice steady. "I understand that some battles aren't won with machines. They're won with courage. And I'm not leaving until this ends." She cuffed him with a set of portable restraints she had brought from Falcon Ridge Base, securing him tightly. He thrashed and cursed, but there was no escape. Finally, she exhaled, relief and exhaustion washing over her. The desert outside was quiet now, the sun setting behind jagged ridges, painting the horizon in blood red and gold. Maria walked to the remains of the Falcon unit, staring at the shattered machinery. The AI was gone, the threat neutralized, but the memories, the ghosts of war, and the cost of Project Falcon lingered. She turned to look at Cross, restrained and defeated. He glared at her with hatred, but she felt no fear, only resolve. "Falcon Ridge will never be your playground again," she said softly. "And neither will I let you rebuild it anywhere else." Cross's breathing was heavy, ragged. His eyes burned with rage, but Maria simply walked away. Outside, the desert air was cold, sharp against her skin. She looked up at the sky, the stars beginning to pierce the twilight. The battle was over, for now. Maria knew the world would never be the same. But she also knew this. She had faced the ghost of her past, the man she once trusted, and the weapon he had built. She had survived. She had won. And above all, she was still free. The desert sun rose slowly over Falcon Ridge Base, casting long golden shadows across the scorched sand. The base was still on high alert, but the chaos of the previous nights had finally begun to settle. Smoke still curled from wrecked drones and the destroyed Falcon unit. But the soldiers moved with a sense of order now, securing, cleaning, and counting their lucky stars that nobody had been seriously injured. Maria Vasquez sat quietly in a corner of the command center, the encrypted drive containing Project Falcon resting on the table before her. She stared at it, the weight of what she had prevented pressing down on her. This was more than just stopping an armed intruder. She had prevented a weapon of unimaginable power from being unleashed on countless lives. Major Thomas Reeves entered the room, his expression grave but tinged with respect. "Sergeant Vasquez," he began, "the reports are coming in. Your actions stopped Cross and neutralized the Falcon prototype. You saved hundreds, maybe thousands of lives. You have the gratitude of this base, this unit, and the country." Maria shook her head, her gaze still on the drive. "It wasn't just me," she said quietly. "The soldiers here, the patrols, everyone played a part. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time." Reeves frowned slightly. "Maria, you were more than in the right place. You were the right person. Your past, your skills, they made the difference. The fact that you were cleaning the base when all of this started is almost irrelevant. What matters is what you did next." She sighed, thinking back over the past days, the break-in, the chase, the AI, Cross himself. Memories of Kandahar surged unbidden. The ambush, the fire, the loss of comrades. She had tried to leave that behind, to disappear into anonymity, but fate had a way of dragging her back into the battlefield. Reeves placed a hand on her shoulder. "There's something else," he said. "The government wants to secure Falcon Ridge fully. You'll be debriefed extensively, but we'd like you to consider coming back. Officially, your expertise is invaluable. The world needs soldiers like you, disciplined, courageous, and decisive." Maria's jaw tightened. She had left the army to escape the past, to find a life where she could be just herself. But standing there, looking at the remnants of Cross's ambition, she realized something profound. Her skills, her courage, her willingness to act in the face of danger, they weren't things she could leave behind. "I'll think about it," she said finally. Outside the base, the desert was still and silent. Cross had been transferred under heavy guard, restrained and heavily monitored. The AI prototype lay destroyed, a testament to human determination over artificial ambition. Maria walked along the perimeter, past burned-out vehicles and scattered debris, reflecting on everything that had happened. She had faced an armed intruder alone, confronted her past, and stopped a weapon that could have caused global catastrophe. Yet even with the victory, there was no celebration in her heart, only a solemn understanding of the cost of war, even on home soil. A group of soldiers approached her cautiously. Among them was Captain Reynolds, who gave a slight nod. "You okay?" she asked. Maria looked at her, then back toward the horizon. "I'll be okay," she said. "It's just hard to imagine that all of this started with me cleaning the base." Reynolds smiled faintly. "Sometimes the smallest actions lead to the biggest consequences. You've proven that tonight." Maria allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible smile. Perhaps she was right. Perhaps cleaning the base had been her starting point. But it had led to something far greater, the protection of countless lives, the preservation of justice, and the quiet satisfaction of having faced the ghosts of her past and come out stronger. Days later, the investigation was concluded. Falcon Ridge Base was reinforced, surveillance systems upgraded, and strict protocols established to prevent any future breaches. Cross remained in secure custody, interrogated repeatedly, But Maria never needed to return. He had no escape, no remaining leverage, no remaining plan. The encrypted drive was secured under the highest level classification, its secrets locked away to prevent misuse. Maria had been commended officially for her bravery, though she insisted her recognition be modest. Awards, medals, and accolades meant little compared to the lives saved. Yet life slowly began to return to normal. The base had survived. The soldiers who had once been tense, anxious, and fearful now laughed, shared meals, and repaired equipment. Maria herself returned to her cleaning duties, though with a newfound respect from everyone around her. No one doubted her capability, her bravery, or her resolve. The janitor who once went unnoticed had become a legend. But Maria's story didn't end with Falcon Ridge. She took time to reflect on her past, finally allowing herself to grieve for the comrades she had lost in Kandahar, the missions she had abandoned, and the life she had tried to escape. She visited memorials, wrote letters she never sent, and slowly rebuilt a sense of peace inside herself. Even in quiet moments, she remained vigilant. She knew there would always be threats, men like Cross, ambitions like Project Falcon, and technologies that could become weapons. But she also knew her own strength, her own courage, and her own commitment to protecting the innocent. Her actions at Falcon Ridge became a story shared among new recruits, a story not just of heroism, but of resilience, quick thinking, and the courage to act when no one else could. She was a living example of what it meant to be a soldier, a protector, and a human being unafraid to face impossible odds. Months later, Maria stood at the edge of the base, looking out at the desert. The sun rose again, golden and unyielding, casting light on the sand, the mountains, and the horizon beyond. A young soldier approached her, hesitant but respectful. "Sergeant Vasquez, I just wanted to say, thank you for everything. We all saw what you did." Maria looked down at him, smiled softly. "Just remember this," she said quietly. "Courage isn't about being fearless. It's about acting even when you are afraid. That's what keeps people alive." The soldier nodded, eyes wide with admiration. Maria turned back toward the desert, feeling the weight of the past months lift slightly. She had faced the intruder, faced Cross, faced the ghosts of her past, and she had survived. The desert wind carried her hair, and the world seemed still, vast, and beautiful. She realized that she had found something more than survival. She had found purpose. And for Maria Vasquez, that was more than enough. The base hummed with life behind her. Soldiers going about their duties, and somewhere in the distance, the desert stretched endlessly, a reminder that the world was large. Challenges were many, but courage and resolve could always tip the balance. Maria walked back toward her duties, ready to face whatever came next. No longer just a janitor, no longer just a ghost of her past. She was Maria Vasquez, a soldier, a protector, and a hero.